Welcome to District 32, immersion, inspiration for ambitious business owners with big dreams.
Hello, my name is Lorraine Garvey. I'm of District 32, and I'm very excited to be here today with Greg Smargiassi, the founder of OURCFO. How are you, Greg?
Very well, thanks, Lorraine. How are you?
I am really well, thank you. Love getting into some of these discussions and sharing wisdom, with business owners out there. So OURCFO, it's a flexible service. You've got a big team of world-class experts on demand. You've been in business for 30 years, or you've been a CPA for 30 years. What got you into that first, Greg? What took you into the financial world?
It was actually not by design. I fell into accounting. It was I was going to be a rock star. That didn't work out. So the alternative was to get into the numbers game, and so that's what I did. And it's been a great journey. I've learned a lot over that period of time.
Yeah, okay. Well, there's still time for rockstar,
Yeah, it does enter my mind every now and then, but given that I don't play guitar very well and I can barely sing, I don't think that would be a good idea.
There's many effects online available these days, Greg. So look, you're going to be doing a presentation for District 32, an upcoming presentation. It's called Blowing the Lid, Strategy to Numbers and Back. And I just love some of the terminology you use. I thought, if anybody's interested, look at your website, ourcfo.com.au, and you've got some really great terminology around how you tell stories about finance. So I'm really, really excited for that session. But more importantly, let's get into it. I want to pick your brains around your financial wisdom and acumen. So look, finances can be sexy or non-sexy depending on who we're talking to, right? Cash flow is a big issue. Financial projections are a big issue. We know that, but that's on a very surface level as business owners. In your experience, what are the biggest challenges that businesses face when it comes to managing their finances?
Yeah, it's a great question, Lorraine. I get that question often. And I think you mentioned before that numbers can be sexy, or sometimes they can be not so sexy. And I think for a lot of people, they're not so sexy. So one of the greatest challenges that we have is getting people to engage and take more notice of what their numbers are telling them. And I think a lot of people are more interested in the other sort of sexy topics like marketing and sales and people and culture and growth and strategy and all those things. And what's often neglected is what I call the back end of the business, which is the administration, the numbers, and all the foundations that often support a business's ability to grow. So I think there's part of it is that for a lot of people, it's very unsexy when we start talking about numbers. If I was out on a Friday night, it's certainly not a topic that I would bring up at a dinner party. So it is a challenge. And I think the other part of it as well is that sometimes people get a little frightened of numbers, and it's not because they don't have the intelligence to understand it. But one of the things that I've learned in my journey is that we all have different learning styles. And as finance professionals, and even as non-finance professionals, we tend to adopt a style of communication that we know and that we warm to. And given that we are all different, when we use our own style of communication, a lot of the time it does not resonate or connect with the person that we're speaking to. So if you understand a little bit about emotional intelligence and emotional fitness and effective communication, one of the things that we need to do is to flex our style of communication to the person that we are communicating with to get effective communication. And so in the content that we've built and the communication system that we've built, we've been very, very conscious of the fact that people do have different communication styles, and that often people have a visual element of learning and making decisions. So we've created a communication system that is highly visual. So the session that we have for District 32, whilst it's all about the numbers, you actually won't see any numbers at all. It's completely and utterly visual. And yes, and a lot of people, I'm looking forward to seeing the look on the attendees' faces when we introduce the topic of numbers, because it's not usually a raucous applause like you would get if you were a Bono from U2, for example. But once we get into the content, they will be highly engaged, and I'm absolutely certain that they will learn something about their business that they did not know before.
We're banking on it. But yeah, I'd be glad to. But you're talking about there, communication styles. I come across it regularly. You get people who decide that they're numbers people or they're not numbers people, and therefore don't show me a spreadsheet, don't talk to me in financial terms. It's not my job. I'm not, So to go beneath the surface and actually look at how you can communicate with people is goal number one. So is that when we were talking there, when I asked you around the biggest challenges, is that's your challenge, trying to talk to business owners. But when it comes to business owners managing their own finances, what challenges do they come across?
Yeah, there's lots of challenges from a financial perspective. And I think, one of the reasons that I got into doing what I'm doing now is that I saw a massive opportunity there. And that opportunity is represented by a big gap in the market, in that what I believe that business owners need and what is available to them, there is a massive gap there. So I think part of the problem is that there is not an effective education system for business leaders and business owners to understand their numbers and piece all those mythical things together. So I think that a large part of the problem is that there's just a gap in what's available to business owners. The other part of it as well is that the accounting profession of which I come from, so I was a tax accountant for 15 years, is not geared towards educating people around their numbers. It is very compliance focused, and I say this with respect to the accounting profession because they are important. We do need them. We do need their advice when it comes to compliance and taxation matters and so forth. But they serve a purpose, and the purpose is to make sure that we're doing everything that we need to do to be legally compliant from a tax point of view, and also from a corporation's law point of view. So the challenge, I think, for business owners is just a lack of the right kind of support, the right kind of availability of supporting that area. And I think that's where the challenges stem from. And one other point that I would make about that as well is that one of the greatest questions that I used to get when I was working as a tax accountant is they would say to me, you're telling me that I made all this profit and I've got this taxable income, yet I don't see that translating to cash in the bank. And because of that, I'm now a bit skeptical about what you're telling me. And because of that skepticism, I'm losing a bit of trust. And I've also got to pay all this tax. So why is that? Why is that occurring? And I must admit, even as a young accountant, when I was doing, I could not explain it to the client effectively. I could not explain to them why the profit and loss report would say one thing and their cash at bank would say something else. And after a period of time, I got tired of not being able to do that. I felt embarrassed that I wasn't able to explain it effectively. So I took it upon myself to firstly understand it really well. And I think there's a saying that says, if you can't explain something in simple terms, then you don't understand it yourself.
That's right.
And that's certainly something that I experienced, and I'll be very open and honest about that. And even 3 or 4 years ago, I presented this session to a CFO mastermind group. So I had a room full of CFOs. And I said to them, in 25 words or less, what's the difference between profitability and cash flow? And the room went silent. And for me, that was pretty scary, in that here we have a group of finance professionals that were not able to articulate that especially important relationship between profit and cash. Because it is a big source of frustration and a big source of stress. And when we educate people, when they don't understand something, that's when people get stressed. When they lose control, that creates stress. So what we've done is we've built the communication system, as I mentioned, to educate people so that they understand it. And we can once we understand it, then we can measure it. And if we can measure it, we go back to the golden rule around numbers. What you measure, you can manage. Yep. And we've upgraded the golden rule to the platinum rule. And the platinum rule is what you measure, you can strategize.
Okay.
So without strategy, we're sitting around in the dark, poking around, hoping for a better result. And most of the time that doesn't work. So I believe that the problem is around education and the availability of that kind of support.
Okay. So a couple of things there. Thank you very much for that. I mean, that just to summarize, what you're saying there is that the issue is not inability or lack of intelligence or lack of drive. It is all around not having access to the right information at the right time, and comprehensive information that people can understand at a level that they speak on and communicate on. And I was laughing there when you were talking about I've got profit, but where is my cash? I've had 2 conversations with actually friends who are in business last week who are saying to me, Lorraine, but my accountant says this, but I don't have any money. I'm like, well, try to talk them through it. But they're like, but I'm looking at the profit and loss. Where did it go? I didn't spend it. So that is a massive issue that people are having every single day. So sorry, I was smiling when you were saying that because it resonated right away. But also just back to your question there, you said you asked a room full of CFOs what the difference between cash flow and profitability is in 25 words. What's your definition, Greg?
Well, it's very simple. So there are 5 elements that profit must cover before you get to see positive cash flow. And I would need some visual tools here to explain them very clearly, but in 25 words or less, these are the things that need to be included before you can calculate or why the difference exists between profit and cash. So they are the growth in the value of their working capital, and that definitely requires some visual explanation.
Okay.
They need to pay down debt. So if the company has any borrowings or the business has any borrowings, then the bank obviously expects that to be repaid. So we've got to pay back the money that we borrowed. So that's the second one. When we make a profit, there's 2 certainties in life these days. There might even be a third one, but certainly 2. And that is when you make a profit, you pay tax. And so that's the third one. The fourth one is capital expenditure. So sometimes businesses will buy capital items like a desk, a chair, and a computer, and it just doesn't make any sense to go to a bank to fund that with debt. So we pay for that out of profitability. And if we do that half a dozen times in a year or more, that starts to become a significant or a material amount. And then, of course, the last one, and I say this as the last one because it's often the last one, and that is dividends or drawings coming out of the business. As business owners, I think we were earlier, we make a lot of sacrifices, and often the financial part of, or our personal finances are put second to the business so that we can take care of the goose that lays the golden egg. So they are the 5 items.
Thank you very much. You managed to say that extremely well for being put on the spot there.
That was way more than 25 words, but if I said that.
But we have to explain it in a way, so thank you for that. Look, Greg, so looking at financial management at the minute, obviously your recommendation is that education process, that understanding process from the beginning. It should probably be a stamp when you apply for your ABN. You need to go through some financial literacy training. But with regards to best practices in financial management, what does that look like now? What does that look like now, and where we're at? What is best practice?
The analogy that I often use is that when we drive a car, for example, we have a windscreen and a rear view mirror, and they are proportioned that way for a reason. So we look more in a forward direction when we're driving our vehicles than we do in a rear view direction. The rear view is important. We occasionally need to see what's behind us and what is beside us when we're driving a vehicle, but we mostly look in a forward direction. Experience tells me that if people are paying attention to their financial data and their numbers, experience tells me that they're looking in a rear view direction. So most data that is available to small and medium-sized businesses, and even big businesses for that matter, is rear view focused. So the big challenge right now is that businesses are using a rear view focus to move in a forward direction, and ultimately that doesn't work. So the way that we work with businesses these days is that we give them data that is proportionate in a forward sense and in a rear view sense. So there is technology available these days where you can create that forward view on a regular basis. So when we get to what we call an executive meeting or a board meeting, we are talking about not only historical data, but we are also talking about what their forward view looks like, both in all senses in terms of profitability, cash flow, and financial position. And that is certainly available to businesses these days. There's, as I mentioned a little earlier, technology does exist to allow that to occur, and you can create that forward view using the right kind of tech and also developing the right kind of data collection processes within the business to create that forward view. So pre-COVID, for example, about 30% of our client base were using that part of our service, the forward view service. Now, post-COVID or post-beginning of the pandemic, just under 90% of our client base have now engaged us to provide that forward view, especially during the early stages of the pandemic. And now that they've had that experience, they don't want to let that go because it gives them so much more valuable information that they can focus on. They can anticipate issues before it's too late, and they give themselves time to address any problems that are approaching. And not only problems, but also to take up opportunities. And businesses are generally made up of two things. They're a box of problems, and they are a box of opportunities. And one of the greatest challenges that we have as business owners is focusing on the right things. And we have very limited time available to us. And given that we are so stretched for time, we may as well be focusing on the things that are going to make a difference.
Yeah.
And I think it's the Pareto principle that says 80% of our results will come from 20% of our activities.
Yep.
So we may as well focus on the activities that are generating the results, and having that forward view will certainly allow that.
So that, just to dig a little bit deeper there, Greg, on that forward view, I mean, most business owners will, I'm assuming most business owners will take, as you say, that rear view, we'll take our past experience, we'll take our past results, our past sales figures, expenditure, and then we'll carry that on to create a 12-month cash flow forecast or a revenue forecast budget, and you might elevate a little bit or increase them based on your resources or what you assume your capacity to be. How is that the service that you, and you say, you know, there's technologies that use that. Is this technologies you've developed, or is this something that you can tag on that you use in Xero? Have they all got the capacity to do that? Or is there some, I'm guessing there's some real intelligence that you bring from an outsider to actually make those projections much more accurate than they would be from a business owner just taking what we've done in the past and adding on 10%.
Yeah. Yeah, so the technology that I'm referring to is a system called Medano, which is an Australian product, comes out of Melbourne. And so over the last 5 years, we have been researching and testing a range of forecasting apps and technology.
Okay.
And what we found was that we were not able to get away from Excel, because Excel has incredible power in terms of formula and massaging data and complex equations. The challenge that we had with Excel, and if you look at the research, 80% of Excel workbooks globally have formula error. It's really, really dangerous. So when we were thinking about our own business and scaling up and becoming a bigger business, I felt that we could not mitigate that risk of formula error enough to make sure that we would not inadvertently give the wrong kind of advice to a business. And if we did that, we could potentially destroy a business and destroy ourselves in the process. So I tested a range of different systems, and the one that we landed on, as I said, is a system called Medano. And Medano actually sits inside of Excel as an app.
Okay.
So what it does is it automates a lot of Excel processes, and it also has auditing tools and protection for formulas. So once the formulas have been tested and we go through all the testing processes, we can lock those formulas down so they cannot be changed. And when we hand over a three-way forecast, for example, the unlicensed user cannot change any formulas. They cannot change the structure of the Excel workbook. It is fixed. They can change the assumptions, which are the inputs, which will give them different outputs when they want to do what-if calculations and model certain decisions. But it provides that protection around formula, and it also, as I mentioned, automates a lot of Excel processes. So we can create a three-way forecast very, very efficiently. We can turn it around very quickly. And any businesses can do this with the right kind of support and help.
So I guess that's where I was trying to get to. So the technology there is just something that enables you to support business owners better. The real magic there comes from working with someone like yourself who understands what a three-way forecast is, or financial modeling and projections, and what does that look like. And I think that's what you've mentioned before. That's where the gap in the business savvy or financial understanding is. And going through our business and meeting with the accountant once a year then becomes very risky.
Yeah, it is. And just meeting, looking at the numbers once a year is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
And as I'm sure you would appreciate, Lorraine, business is very fluid. It changes very quickly. What happened last month is almost irrelevant for the next month. And if something is going to go bad, then we need to be on top of that in almost real time.
Yeah.
And it's very doable. The tech is there these days. So I'll use the Excel analogy. Most of us only scratch the surface in terms of the power of Excel and its capability. So most of us, when we're using Excel, we only use about 5% of its capability. And in a technology sense, whether it's Xero, MYOB, any other accounting system or ERP, most of us are only using the very baseline functionality of those systems. Yeah. And I often hear complaints, it's like, I'm not getting this and I'm not getting that. And it's well, what are your processes like? Process supports technology and technology supports process. So if we want to get the better use out of technology, we need to drive the development of processes within a business. That's how we get the best out of technology.
We do. And for those of us who've been here for a while and we're introduced to Excel when it was first developed many, many years ago, we haven't looked in to see what the capabilities are. We're still using the same stuff we learned 20 years ago. There's a bit of admission there. But look, you've been talking before about, near enough is just not good enough anymore. And as business leaders, we have to develop this capability and the competencies in financial sense. Is that your recommendation, that everyone, goes and seeks out a CFO and has a conversation to start with? Where do people start on that journey? Do they go and get some training? Do they have a conversation? Where do you recommend? Where do people start?
Yeah, that you have all the good questions today, Lorraine. That is a great question. And that goes back to my comments a bit earlier, in that we saw a very, very big gap in the market. So there is, I believe, a huge need for that kind of support, but there is very, very little supply. Yeah. And I would like to speed up our reach and our growth, because I want to close that gap. That's why I get out of bed every single day. And again, it's not like I go to a dinner party on a Friday night and talk about balance sheets. It's going to bore the pants off everyone. But I believe that we need to get on top of this. Businesses do need to understand their finances. They need to understand it at least at a strategic level. And if they've got the right kind of support, the detailed stuff can be handled by the people that are providing the support, and they raise issues when they come up, so that the leadership team and the CEO or the managing director of a business is aware of what those issues are. And right now, I would say that most businesses have issues that they are not even aware of until it's the 11th hour and they wake up one day and an issue presents itself and they've got 5 minutes to deal with it. And it's not a great way to run a business, and it causes a lot of unnecessary stress. So that's the challenge. which doesn't give the probably the best answer that you're looking for. But what I would say is to get educated. Seek education as much as you possibly can.
So can that start with a bit of a, because our listeners are a wide range of business owners, we've got people from startup to getting established to the multi-million revenue. But for someone who might be, thinking, well, that's out of my depth, I've got issues there around affordability. Do they start there? Is it a review? Is that something that, the people could come to you or another CFO and say, here are my books, can I have a review? You can tell me the gaps, what I might not be thinking, because we can't see from inside the tin. Would that be somewhere that people would start and then identify what's maybe wrong with the business, but also the gaps in the leader's knowledge?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great place to start. And most of our clients have got some scale. So most of our clients are turning over between $2 million and $50 million per year. And we've been able to develop a value proposition that fits really nicely for those businesses.
Right.
For those smaller businesses, we still haven't worked out how we can deliver that kind of support that is affordable to those businesses. So as we scale up, we hope that we'll be able to do that into the future, because we want to get this out to everybody.
Yeah. Okay.
But what I would say is the kind of work that you're doing, for example, Lorraine. So, you're providing your members with education, you're seeking out those that can offer valuable advice and insights on business.
Yeah. And
I've been a part of many mastermind groups and other groups that are similar over my time in business, and I've had a lot of value from those groups. So I seek out information. I'm an active learner, and certainly subscribe to the theory that the business is only ever as good as its leadership. So if we're looking to develop a business, then the first place we need to look is at the leadership and developing the leadership. And as I said, with an organisation like District 32, that's a perfect place to go to develop as a business leader.
Thank you very much for that, Greg. Love that comment. But I was going to ask you earlier what gets you up in the morning, but you've already just answered that one. What is and that's about filling that gap. So what is the big dream for you as a business owner yourself? Can you share the end game for you, or the exit plan, or is it just the dream, the vision, the purpose? I understand what the purpose is, but what's the big dream for you?
There's two parts to this. One is at a personal level, and then there's another which is at the business level. At a personal level, my purpose is very, very clear to me, and that is that we're creating meaningful and rewarding career opportunities for numbers and finance professionals. That's why I do what I do at a personal level. And that was born out of a lot of frustration from the accounting profession. And my frustration is just a reflection of my personality type. As I said before, the accounting profession is hugely important. It plays an important role in our society and the business community. But the frustration that I had was that I was not, in a personality sense, suited to being a tax accountant or an auditor or a compliance-focused style accountant. And so when I got to about my mid-30s, I was hugely frustrated and disappointed, and I was even angry. It's like, I was coached into selecting subjects for high school so that I could get into university, so that I could have a career as an accountant. Don't be a rock star. Be an accountant. It's a safer route. So it was that frustration that drove that personal purpose. So that's the purpose at a personal level. At a business level, it is really to close that gap and to lead the accounting profession into a new way of doing things. So we need more businesses like us, which might seem a little bit strange, but I take a lot of inspiration from Elon Musk and Tesla, and you might know that Tesla released a lot of its patents globally so that they could accelerate the move towards electrified vehicles and taking internal combustion engines off the road. So I often share my intellectual property with other accountants, and I've been to accounting firms and I present the same session that I'm about to do for District 32, and I hand over a lot of our intellectual property to say, use it educate your clients, help them understand, help your team members, help them understand what it is that's going on with their business, because I see it as being that important. And I guess there's a bit of self-interest there in that the stronger the businesses that we have, we all gain benefits from that. We all will benefit from a stronger business community. As I'm sure you would know, Lorraine, the biggest employer in Australia is the small business community, the small and medium-sized business community. We are the engine room of the economy. So why would we not work to make the SME world much stronger than it is?
And that's the voice of a business owner right there. You do what it takes to get this stuff out and actually make a difference. Greg, it's been absolutely wonderful chatting with you this afternoon. I've loved all your analogies that are through there. I really can't wait to see you present at that upcoming event. And look, how can people reach out to you to get those visuals on the five points? Where can people reach you?
They can certainly check out our website, which I think you mentioned a little bit earlier, which is www.OURCFO.com.au. All of our contact details are there. So if you wanted to get an email to us or even call me direct, most welcome to.
Beautiful. Greg, thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks, Lorraine. Absolute pleasure.
Bye.
You've been listening to District 32, immersion, inspiration for ambitious business owners with big dreams.